Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Diann Floyd Boehm on today's show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Indie Beacon radio show. I am your hostess, Diann Floyd Boehm, and I am delighted to welcome our guest, the award-winning author, Joe Kilgore. Welcome, Joe.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm excited to speak to you about your various books. But before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my background is actually in advertising. I had a long career with Ogilvy and Mather, which was an international advertising agency, and did a lot of work in both the U.S. and overseas and whatnot, creating television commercials and radio spots, newspaper, magazine ads, that sort of thing. And when I left the agency business, I thought I'd try my hand at writing fiction. A lot of people think there's not a big difference between fiction and advertising, and they may well be right. But I gave it a shot, and so I started writing novels as opposed to TV and radio ads.
Well, I'm so glad you did, because wow, you have a great list of novels. And how did you decide what particular genre you wanted to do?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I tend to write what I like to read. And I was always a big detective novel fan, big Raymond Chandler fan, and a lot of the people who wrote the sort of classic detective novels of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I tried my hand at that. But I also felt that I wanted to get at some other genres as well. I did a Western novella not too long ago, which was also a mystery, but based in 1860s Southwest. So I tend to, rather than work completely in one particular genre, I tend to sort of go from place to place based on the kind of stories that I would like to read as well as write, you know.
I do understand completely. And are you referring to the one, the horse?
The Horse Killer?
The Horse Killer? That became a script, right?
Yeah, I did a screenplay for that. The screenplay won an award in Los Angeles as best drama. Now, there's a big difference between winning awards and actually getting a film produced, you know. So
Yeah.
so far I've been doing well with the critics, but not as well with the financiers. So we'll just have to kind of see how that goes. It always takes a while to get things off the ground, but you never know.
You never know, and it's so worth having it come to life on the big screen for sure. I was reading a little bit about it, so we'll have to discuss that more in depth. But I understand that your latest one that we can pre-order is The Dying Art.
Yes, yeah, it's sort of a new take on the classic detective or gumshoe novel. It's based on the idea of this San Diego-based detective gets a message from an old high school flame of his who is asking to help to get some support, some security support for her husband, who is an artist. And he agrees to go help her out. And he doesn't realize until he gets there, and there being in Houston, that that the artist is in fact an artist who paints with the cremated ashes of human remains. And not only is he a bit surprised by this, but he also finds out that a lot of people don't think this is the greatest idea in the world. A lot of people question whether this is memorializing someone or really defiling that same individual. So that whole sort of social aspect, that social question of does it make sense to be doing that, sort of permeates the rest of the story as the detective tries to keep the people at bay who are wanting to stop this artist from doing all this, even as he's going up in profile. And it becomes a question of whether a number of events start to happen. It becomes a question of whether those events are sort of circumstantial, unfortunate happenings, or whether there are in fact attempted murder on the fellow. And so the whole thing sort of bounces back between Houston and Havana, Cuba, and Marfa, Texas, and then back into Chicago, and it goes all around the U.S. as the detective is trying to protect the artist, sort of keep his old flame from reigniting with the lady that he knew, and himself trying to come to grips with how he feels about this whole idea of what I've called dying art.
Wow. I'm so glad you shared, because I thought if I mentioned what he was painting with, I'd let a big secret out. But it really grabbed my attention, and I'm for sure going to be pre-ordering that. Was there something that inspired you to do this particular thing?
Not necessarily. I have known some artists who did that, and it's always a question, to your own self about how you feel about that sort of thing, rather than trying to come up with a sort of straightforward answer that I don't know if I really could. I decided to sort of use it as just for a story, to try to build a story around this whole social question of is it right, wrong, or is there a right or wrong? Is there a moral conundrum there or not? To do this sort of thing, and to try to build a mystery around that, because as the story develops, you do get to believe that someone is out to stop the artist, but you don't know who. There are a number of suspects and whatnot, everything from other artists to gallery owners to writers, everything like that. And as the story progresses, you as a reader try to figure out just who is out to really stop this artist from doing what he wants to do.
It's so exciting, and I can see a screenplay in that as well. You named some fabulous locations. I've actually been to Cuba. I was fortunate to go before it was even opened. And so having Cuba, the Marfa Lights, and et cetera, just makes it for really fun reading. And I didn't even realize that people actually paint with that. And that's amazing to me.
Yeah, they do. It's interesting. Well, a lot of people don't realize it and don't think about the number of individuals who die who are not really connected to any other individuals. In every town, in every state, town, municipality, whatever, it's generally the practice of the city government to take control of indigent individuals who die, and no one claims their body or does anything like that. And more often than not, those individuals are cremated, and their remains are put in different places by the cities and whatnot. So the idea from the artist and also people that he talked with was to talk to funeral directors about, if they would be willing to, if no one claimed the body, no one had any interest whatsoever in this individual who had passed away, if he could use those remains for his artwork. And so that was kind of the reality behind the idea that started the whole thing rolling and getting into the story.
Well, that is incredible. And I'm going to stop here for a moment so we can listen to our important sponsors. And I have more questions for you when we return.
Great.
Marianne Fairmouth is a career consultant with 30 years experience in the national recruiting world, a multi-award-winning author in multi-genres, and a speaker that gives presentations to help you succeed. Her book, Revolutionary Recruiting, made the top 20 global list of recruiting books. Find her on Amazon, your favorite bookstore, or at fairmouth.com.
Factor 7, the newest thriller by author J.D. May, will keep you turning the pages with mystery, betrayal, lies, and infidelity. Ripped from the headlines, Factor 7 follows two prominent doctors who uncover a clandestine plot to spread a bioweapon with a 98% mortality rate. Journey with them as they experience a world of murder, power, intrigue, and corruption, where it becomes deadly clear that exposing the truth is just as dangerous as the weapon they seek to expose.
Hello, I I'm the author, Denise Bryson. My first book is The Things That Cross My Mind, Inspirational Poetry with Life Lessons. And then my audio book is Love's Reality. And it is also inspirational poetry with a jazzy flair. And then my new book is The Sex, the Lies, and the Soul Ties. They're really short stories written from a poetic expression. And then I have my first children book series, the Blinky series, which the first book is called Meet the Coins, and it is both in English and Spanish. And then the new book, From Coins to Bills. I am the author, Denise Bryson.
To embrace your children's imagination, check out Diann Floyd Boehm's books for kids. There's The Moonling Adventures, all about the animals in the Serengeti. And then there's Harry the Camel, learning to love yourself just the way you are. Then The Little Girl in the Moon. There's one about friendship, another one about the big ideas, which is an inspirational story, and then Tour Tycho Town, right there in Tycho Crater on the moon. All of Diann Floyd Boehm's books are available at B4R Store.
Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Diann Floyd Boehm on today's show.
Hello, everyone, and we're back with our famous author, Joe Kilgore. Joe, welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back. Enjoyed our first run through.
I know, it was great. I'm so excited to read that story. I'm going to make sure my husband reads it as well. So I read how you also have written a lot of short stories, and would you like to share a little bit about them?
Sure. As it turns out, this year, 2021, even though my new book, Dying Art, is coming out in May, toward the end of the year in September, I have a collection of my short stories that are going to be published. The name of that is going to be called Insomniac, Short Stories for Long Nights. And
I love it.
It's literally a collection of a number of different stories that I've written for different venues. Oddly enough, all of which have been published individually, but none of which have been published collectively. So the publisher, decided he would like to put them all together in one package and bring them forward. And they're a collection of short stories that are sort of inspired by art by writers like Graham Greene and Raymond Chandler and Pete Dexter. They're sort of noirish in their approach. Quite frankly, there's not a lot of happy endings to these stories, but they pursue a lot of different things, everything from murder and mayhem to marriages that dissolve rather violently, and it's a way for people to explore a lot of different ideas as opposed to one continuing idea over the course of a book. I think there are like 25 different stories that will be in the book.
Wow, that's a lot. So that's exciting because, as you said, you can take bite size and enjoy that and move on to another opportunity of sagas.
Absolutely, and they're all told from different perspectives. Like one of the stories, I think it's entitled "Those Who Trespass Against Us." It is told from the first person point of view of a man who has been convicted of murder, but simultaneously, it's also told from the point of view of the hangman who is going to have to perform the execution. And as the two stories intertwine, you find that there's perhaps more to one side of the story than you realize in the other, though neither of the two people telling the story realize, or at least one of them doesn't realize that their stories do intertwine. So in a lot of these cases, they're not all told the same way. Frequently, I'll write in the third person, which is sort of an omnipotent look at everything that's going on. But in other cases, I'll do like a first person perspective where you're hearing from people within the story. I even have one story within the collection. It's called The Incident on a Windswept Hill, that was selected by the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library to run in their literary journal. And it's a which one of the things you almost never see in literature is a second person narrative. In other words, you, the reader, participate in the story yourself as you become one of the participants in this particular instance in pardon me, in the execution of a soldier in wartime. So a lot of different perspectives, and as I say, 25 different stories, many of which won different awards for different things. But this is the one opportunity I had to collect all of those into one place. So I definitely wanted to do that.
That's very exciting. And it must take a lot of skill to write that second person, to have the reader be interactive.
It's that's why you almost never see it done, because it's very difficult to maintain a storyline and to maintain a plot when you're trying to make sure that more or less the protagonist is you, the reader. You know, you're talking about I'm sorry, you're talking about how you, the reader, feel about what you're doing and what you're being involved with and whatnot, as opposed to what this person is feeling or what that person is feeling, or even what the poor fellow who's being executed is feeling. So you're basically setting the story so that the reader, you force the reader to interject him or herself into the story to see where it comes out.
You know, I find this exciting on so many levels. One, as a reader, but two, as a person who has been on stage and acted.
Right.
And so my brain is already like seeing it in play formation, man. And then the curtain comes down and opens up and you're ready for another story. So it's all very exciting.
Well, it's interesting to me. I mean, because I have a long background in advertising and commercials and whatnot, I found that the more cinematic or the more theatrical I can make my literature, the more energy it injects into the stories that I'm trying to tell. And so while I'm trying to keep it as literate as I can, I'm also very cognizant of trying to keep everything, the story moving along swiftly and the people involved emotionally, and to keep the whole thing as energetic as I can make it.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. You know, you're in Austin, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. So it would be so much fun to see you read at the State Theater.
Well,
I might have to work on that.
There you go. Well, anything you can do to help out would be more than appreciated. It'd be great.
I love the State Theater. It'd be fun to watch your books and short stories come to life. Is there any favorite story that you have that you've written that you just went, oh my gosh, I just love this one so much, and the character? Well,
I don't know. I think I inject a lot of energy in each one, and writers are terrible because they often feel that whatever they write is the best thing they've written, you know, and no matter how you feel that way, you know, not necessarily every reader does. But I do feel that this particular story that I was mentioning to you, Incident on a Windswept Hill, is, I may be proudest of that one because, as I said, it was accepted by the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library for inclusion in their literary journal.
That's huge.
And you know, when you look at a writer like Kurt Vonnegut, who did such wonderful things, and an organization who's trying to carry on his, you know, his idea and his ideas about writing and whatnot, I was very, very happy to see that particular story became part of that. And it's one of the ones I feel the most involved in, I guess.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm excited about that. Is there, I saw, and you wrote a story about the war,
right?
But it had a very interesting twist to how you worked through that. You know what I'm talking about, and I don't want to spill the beans, but
no, that's okay. No, it was a World War II novel. It was called A Farmhouse in the Rain, and basically, I think the big difference was it simultaneously told two stories of individuals, three different soldiers who were involved in the war itself in France, but also what was going on with the individuals that those three soldiers left behind in the USA. So it was told from both the home front of the US and the battlegrounds of the war in France. And in the middle of it, there is in fact, the title springs from A Farmhouse in the Rain. A murder takes place within this farmhouse, and the reader doesn't really know. The reader is convinced that one of those three soldiers was in fact a murderer, but he or she doesn't know exactly who that might be until they get to the end of the novel, which is probably one of the longest things I've written. And it's between 400 and 500 pages, and takes you into who's really responsible for what happened on that night at A Farmhouse in the Rain.
I love that title, and I can't wait to get a hold of that story too. We're going to stop for a moment and hear our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Publishing marketing package for authors. $1,500 value, save 40% now. Includes a 6-piece marketing kit of 250 bookmarks, 250 business cards, 250 postcards, 1 table banner, 1 table runner, and 50 download cards, plus book cover design, ebook creation, PDF setups, upload to Ingram Spark, scroll placement, video commercial, and interview on IBS. Plus much more. Email bourgeoismedia@look.com for details, or bourgeoismedia.com.
Hi, I'm Mel Greenberg, author of Running with Our Eyes Closed, book 1 in the Empty Nested series. To the world, Samantha has the perfect life. 3 wonderful children, a loving husband, so she thought, and a life split between Dallas and Italy. When her youngest leaves for college, it all comes crashing down, forcing Samantha to re-examine everything. Over 7 days in one of the most romantic countries in the world, Samantha faces the past she thought she'd overcome and begins to redefine her role as a woman, a wife, and a mother.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? Well, during COVID, almost all of us have been doing just that. I'm Charlotte Canyon, award-winning author, actress, and speaker. And my book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, shows you how you can revive, thrive, and survive with 4 golden rules. You have to love one another. You have to respect one another. You have to have patience with one another. And most of all, you've got to forgive one another. I'm Charlotte Canyon, and I approve this message.
Welcome to the Indie Beacon Show, where readers can discover great new indie authors. Find us on all major podcast systems and YouTube. Join Diann Floyd Boehm on today's show.
Hi, Joe. It's nice
Hello.
to be back.
Great.
So I want our listeners to hear where they can find you, read all about you, and where to get your books.
Great. Well, there are a lot of different avenues to do that. One is my website, which is basically pretty straightforward. It's just joekilgore.com. And there you can find out about each of the different novels that are available, as well as a lot of the short stories that I've written, and some background on myself to give individuals a chance to know who they're looking at. And obviously Amazon, everybody can find everybody on Amazon, and I'm the same way there. My newest novel, Dying Art, is being published by an imprint of history of books called Addison and Highsmith. So it's easy to find. Just go to historyofbooks.com and either put in my name, Joe Kilgore, or put in the name of the book, Dying Art, and it will take you there. It's I think it's supposed to be released the 18th of May, something like that. And then later in the year, my short story collection that we discussed is being published by Encircle Publications. There's also encircle.com, I think, or encirclepress.com is a website for them. And all of my books are available on the Indie Lecture Store, which I know I won't get this right, but I think it's b4b.store.com or something like this. Some of our friends in the Arthur's marketing group will certainly know the correct address for that. But it's available a lot of different places, and hopefully you'll also, if you're wandering through a bookstore here or there, one place or another, you'll see one of them as well.
Yes, B for our stores, so we can find it there. And that's great.
Mm.
So besides all the social media outlets and so forth, can you also, so we've shared that, but could you also tell us, is there something, words of wisdom that you would give people who might be interested in starting to write books?
Well, I would say to anyone who's thinking about writing or wanting to be a writer, one, there's no age limit. I didn't really start writing fiction until I had stopped writing advertising, and I was probably between 60 and 70 years old when that happened. And I think the main thing one has to have is perseverance, because quite frankly, no matter how well you write, or no matter how interesting your stories, or no matter what you do, you will always get 75 to 100 rejections before you get someone to agree to want to publish your work. And you never really know where that's going to come from. This latest book, Dying Art, quite frankly, was written a number of years ago, but I never found quite the right publisher who felt like they wanted to help promote it and bring it forward until now. So you've got to have a lot of perseverance and a lot.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Indie Beacon Show, produced by Diann Bourgeois for the Authors Marketing International LLC. Copyright 2021. Voiceover by Diann Bourgeois. If you would like to be a sponsor of the show, please email us at authorsmarketing@outlook.com. If you would like to be on the show, please complete the form found on our website at indiebeacon.com. You may also watch previous year's shows on the website. Music is Frolic of Words, created for Indie Beacon